Are you experiencing the burnout trap? We're here today to discuss how to break the cycle and why people pleasers are particularly susceptible to year end seasonal burnout and how to break the cycle. My name is Amy Ballantyne. Welcome to Power to the People Pleasers. I'm so excited to have my guest, Candace Taylor, here. Welcome, Candace.
I am so delighted. I am a big fan of this podcast and I really look forward to connecting with this audience. It's going to be a great discussion today.
Yes, I'm ready. So, as we always do on the podcast, I would love to know, have you ever been a people pleaser? And if yes, how did that show up in your life?
I always tell people I am a people pleaser in recovery. It's a lifelong relationship with people pleasing. It definitely is a part of my identity. And I think I didn't notice that I was a people pleaser when, I first started to exhibit the common tendencies, common tendencies of it. What helped me to understand it is perfectionism, right? That was the way that my people pleasing was manifesting. I was always a hyperachiever, always thriving and highly successful. I would, try a new hobby or activity and immediately ace it. And if I didn't, I wanted to crack the code for how I could as quickly as possible. And I started to discover as I got into high school and college, these ways, I call them the cracks in the surface of my identity, these ways that I actually was incongruent with the perfectionism that I was building as my ideal. And that started off when I applied to college, and I was like, wait, you want me to choose? I get a scholarship, but you want me to choose to study something that I'm not necessarily passionate about. I've been dancing for 30 years. I'm a professional dancer, and it was always important to me, even though I'm an academic and I'm a nerd and I'm a researcher, it was always important to me to honor that. And having to choose to get a scholarship by rejecting part of my identity that's been a part of who I am for so long felt really incongruent. And so that was one of the clearest examples where I was like, oh, something's off here. Because I could have chosen that path. I could have said, yeah, full ride to college, which some days I'm like, why didn't I choose that? I could have chosen that path and been really successful at it. But that was one of the first moments where I understood that I was using perfectionism, I was using hyperachievement to deny myself part of my identity. And I'm a deeply multi passionate person. And so I think embracing my multi passions has allowed me to get beyond that people pleasing identity.
Embracing say that one more time. Embracing
My multi passionate
multiple.
nature.
Yes. And so many people are multi-passionate.
I think we all are. I think that
Yes.
society wants us to choose only one right way, right? Like that's a tenet
Yes.
of white supremacy. And so obviously with the United States, with a country and a legacy that has a lot of those values still silently lurking in the shadows of our lives, it makes sense that that's a part of, that suppression is a part of how we walk through our days. But we all are multi-passionate. We all are
Yes.
multi-layered and multifaceted. So that's been the biggest thing that I've tried to reclaim. How can I honor all of the threads that weave together this
Mm.
tapestry of Candace? That's like a really big passion of mine. And I'm an artist, so it's like all of my
Mm.
metaphors for how I navigate life kind of weave themselves back to some form of art.
Oh, I love it. And please tell me what kind of dancer? I was a dancer my young life, so I'm so curious.
I mostly specialize in modern dance, but I have like a long history with West African dance movement. I've lived in Central America, and so some layers of various Latin folkloric dances weave themselves in there, but
Ah.
mostly modern.
Oh, so fun. I
So
just
fun.
wanna
What
go
about
dancing
you?
with you. I was a ballet dancer.
Amazing. I
Mhm.
love ballet. There's something really beautiful about the discipline that allows you to find fluidity and expression, and yeah, I've done it all.
Oh, so amazing. Wow, that's another layer of you I didn't know. So I want the listeners to understand how awesome you are. So I just want to share your bio as well. Candace is a cartwheel enthusiast. I love that. I love that. The human form of glitter and multi-passionate bestie. She's had eras of corporate success, performing arts, even working on a Tony Award winning musical and more. And throughout every endeavor, she used her creative, spiritual, and nerdy gifts to empower modern day revolutionaries, visionaries, and culture disruptors. She loves helping individuals prioritize joy so that they can pour from overflow into others and transform the world with their unique magic and creation. So I'm so excited to get to dig into this conversation with you. And my goodness, anyone who writes human form of glitter, I'm pretty sure that was the selling point of having you on the.
I gotta say, a friend
Yeah,
of mine said that. They were like, I was like, well, how would you describe me to someone who doesn't know me? They were like, you're the human form of glitter. And I was like, that is my tagline for the rest of my life. Put that on my tombstone. Human form of glitter.
everywhere. I love it. I love it. Well, let's dig in here for the people who aren't feeling so glittery, right, at this time of the year. So, the burnout trap. In your opinion, I'd love to hear, why are people pleasers particularly susceptible at this time of year to burnout?
I think there are a couple of common qualities that I notice people pleasers embody.
Mm.
The first is that we are deeply empathetic. We feel everything. We feel shifts in our loved ones' energies. We feel shifts in the collective energy. And a lot of us are not aware of how deeply we feel, or we deprioritize tapping into how we feel because we're trying to survive. We're trying to get through and get things done. And so, because of that, we, in the background of our everyday existence, we are depleting ourselves energetically, right, with our empathy. And I think if you don't have a solid, energy management process or ritual, and you're just energetically being drained in the background, it leads to burnout ultimately. And then I think another quality that is quite common is that we're ambitious, right? The people pleasers are, like I talked about with my how I noticed that I was a people pleaser. A lot of us are perfectionists. A lot of us are deeply ambitious. We want to do what's never been done. We want to experience what's never been experienced in our families, in our towns, in the communities we are a part of. And so when you are highly ambitious, you're often exerting a lot more energy and effort than your counterparts. Maybe you're picking up the slack from somebody else. Maybe you are trying to do it all, right? All at once. Your multi-passionate energy kind of causes you to take on more than you even realize. My dog is just popping in here.
It's all
um,
good. It's all
another
good.
one of my passions, my puppy. So I think the last layer that I'll share before, I allow you to dig in some more, is we're often mission oriented, and our jobs, our businesses require some more emotional labor than us just clocking in and clocking out, right? We're not just saying, okay, I'm punching my numbers in a spreadsheet, and these numbers don't matter to me. They deeply matter to us, and they usually have a direct correlation to what we want to see in the world. And so those three things, the pressure that is created from those three things, often silently, I think, is what leads us to burnout and keeps us in that burnout cycle, because there's a lot of ways that we adapt to just grin and bear it, because
Mm.
we care about the people that we love, and that's why we lean into empathy. We care about our mission, and that's why we're like, okay, I'm gonna come hell or high water, I'm leaning in. And we are ambitious, and there's something that feels good when you succeed at the things you're aspiring to, which I think is another layer of this burnout trap.
Mm. Wow. I agree with all of what you've shared there, and I'm curious, for the first one you mentioned energy management processes. And if you could dig into that a little bit, as people are thinking, okay, they've got their hands up going, yep, yep, you've just described me. So now what?
Yeah, I think I try to simplify this, and I love working with metaphors with, my community and my clients. So the clearest metaphor is, think of it like a natural resource, right? We have water, we have wood. These are clear things that we know we have in abundance, but we know there's certain limitations to them. And so I like to think of these on a spectrum, right? What are energy amplifiers or energy boosters in your life? And then what are the energy detractors or energy leaks? And we can just categorize in the area. I know for myself, music is an energy booster. I put on a song and it immediately shifts my mood. That being said, it's not sustainable, right? Like, once I've been listening to music for a while, or once I get moving, it shifts how it shows up in my life. So that's not something that's an energy sustainer, but it does help. If I need a instant shift in my energy, we're going to go with that. In terms of an energy sustainer, for an example, that might be my daily movement ritual. I commit to movement every single day. I've got a community that's centered around it called the Daily Cup of Joy, and we get up and we move our bodies for 15 minutes every single day, which is incredible. That's an energy sustainer, right? So those are going to be amplifying the energy that I have. And then it's also important to notice the energy detractors, right? What are those things that zap your energy? I call them energy vampires. An vampire for me is someone or something that feels like a complaining energy, right? The second I start to hear complaints, even if I'm not hyper aware of it, I notice my energy drops. So it might not be something I'm someone complains to me, and I might not notice immediately that I'm upset or frustrated by it. In fact, as an empathetic person, I probably am like, oh yeah, I get it. But it does zap energy from me, and so I have to be mindful that either I'm gonna get in an energy booster right after that, or I'm gonna separate myself from that energy altogether. And then an energetic leak might be a cluttered room, right? I have ADHD. And again, it's not something that I notice right away. I'm still zooming, still getting things done. But I notice that the more the clutter shows up, it slowly drips out energy from me. It becomes distraction that steals from me. So if you can just lock into those four categories and start to identify some things in your orbit, that's going to be super helpful for designing your own energy management system and process.
Mm, I love that. And y- I love that you use such a powerful metaphor. I actually, before we were on today, I had this download of people saying, well, I don't like to eat breakfast. And this is part of our energy as well, right? How we're fueling our body. I'm totally going on a tangent here because this metaphor popped in my head right before our conversation. But it was this idea of like, you probably don't love to fill up your gas tank of your car. I mean, where I am, it's pretty expensive right now. So I
Mhm.
know I don't love to fill it up, but I do it anyways, right? I do the things that keep me running at the optimal level and giving me the energy to live the life that I want to live. So I love that you shared that natural resource metaphor there, and that you shared very practical suggestions for people to reflect on where might it show up in their lives. I know for music, I've uncovered, having done ballet, as I've already said, for years, I've uncovered a very powerful anchor for me is classical music. And it is sustainable for me. When I'm driving by myself listening to classical music, I could drive for hours. It is like amazing how powerful that anchor is in my life. So I think for people, it's about getting clear, doing some reflection on, as you said, these four areas. So let's dig in a little bit to what are five or a few silent saboteurs that are causing people the challenge of getting into the burnout state.
Yeah. I think the biggest one is that there's too much pressure, right?
Mhm.
People pleasers, we want other people to be happy. We want people to be pleased with who we are. And so we
Mm,
put on a lot of pressure on ourselves to aspire to and align with the ideals of other people. And I think that, you know, it feels funny to even say that because obviously we want other people to be happy, right? And we want to show up in the best way that we possibly can. But if we're chronically pushing ourselves to that standard, it becomes unsustainable. Even if we're good at it, it like starts to, I think, impact your soul, impact that
mm,
like capacity to cultivate joy for yourself. Happiness is fleeting and you might be like, whatever, I don't need to be happy. But we start to chip away at our capacity to be joyous. And that is something that I don't know, it's a relationship for myself. And I'm like, I don't ever want anything to get in the way of me and joy. Right. That's the thing
mhm,
that's earned. That's the thing that is rooted in gratitude that you're like, you know what? Circumstances might not be perfect, but I still can appreciate that I'm alive, that there's only one me, so on and so forth. But I think that's a big one, right? When we put too much pressure on ourselves, it starts to short circuit that capacity to cultivate joy.
mm,
I think another one that's really common, especially in a world with a billion-dollar self-care industry, is that we are not personalizing how we're caring for ourselves, how
mm,
we're nourishing ourselves. We're saying, okay, this is what they said on social media. This is what I read in this book that I picked up, in Barnes and Noble. This is what I read in that article that my friend sent me. And we're not saying, does this actually align with who I am, right? You just talked about
Mhm.
classical music being an anchor for you. If you decided to put on rap because there's a new study that says rap music really animates you and energizes you, and you're like, but it doesn't feel right. It just doesn't. I think that's what a lot of us end up doing. We look at these fads, we are inundated, we're hearing so much, we're on our phones so much and taking in and consuming a lot of data and a lot of information. And so it then becomes like this battle of all of this information that we're receiving, and we're not actually tailoring it and personalizing it. And it's so funny because you're like, of course I'm personalizing it. I'm choosing it. But you're choosing from the input and from a consumeristic standpoint rather than from, and I'm always pointing people back to their souls. What is your soul asking you? What is the inner quiet, the inner cheerleader, the inner mentor saying that you desire and you deserve? And then I think the last one, which is related to personalization, is like people are just not being strategic. They're not saying, okay, and it's hard to be strategic with life. You're like, there's so many options, but this is how I work with folks to help them to, utilize things like astrology to be more strategic and map the patterns and cycles of life. And I know one of my favorite episodes that I've listened to on the podcast dove into astrology and how it can support, um, you know, what I think your soul aligned strategy. So yeah, like we have to be saying, okay, I'm gonna contextualize what I'm doing in my day to day life with something, and I'm going to be consistent and evaluate what happened over time and make these tiny tweaks so that I'm making sure that they align with me.
Oh, wow. There's so many good nuggets that are just hitting my soul. So thank you for that. I love that you do the daily cup of joy and getting people to actually take time to tap into that. I also, when you were talking about the pressure, the image that I use for this is the pressure cooker. This idea of how much are we putting on ourselves, uh, and and I am a big advocate of our language and understanding the words that we're choosing and how that's not only reflective of the thoughts we're thinking but impacting the world that we see around us. And if you know you look at how often you're saying the word should, for example,
Hmm.
and need to, ugh, I've shared on the podcast before my personal connection to the words need to, and how it, when I was called out on that many years ago, it really was a catalyst, a huge catalyst for me changing as a person, simply by being called out uh, on how I was, the lenses I was using. And so I would invite people to look at, what lenses are you looking through? Are you looking through the should lenses all day? Are you looking through the need to lenses all day? Adding that in to a layer of what you're saying here. And I would also add, in your third section there, this idea of, all you are the only one who lives in your body. So I loved what you said about personalizing, and are they really choosing all the content they're looking at? If it's being filtered specifically for them, I would say probably not. Is the content they're consuming actually in alignment? Like, that's what you're talking about, right? Like, what is the filter you're running this through? Do you have, I kind of visualize the furnace filter, you know, because I have to change it in my house. And so imagine like pulling out the furnace filter of yourself, of like, what is the filter that you're running all of these pieces of content through to decide, okay, yeah, this is actually aligned with me. This is something that I want to move forward on. I've had so many people similar to you in the experience of, they see it on social media, they got to try it. They hear it from this person, they got to try it. They do this, they got to try it. I'm just like, oh my gosh. And how does it feel? Oh, it feels awful. I'm like,
Yep.
well,
Yep. I mean,
what
even
did,
even something as simple as, are you choosing or are you having it broadcast to you? Right? Like
yeah.
I have a personal ritual where I scroll on social media. I'm not above anybody, but I have a list of things that are pleasurable to me. I have a list of things that make me feel joyful, and I have a list of things that I'm desiring in any season of my life.
Mm.
And I'm actively, intentionally going into social media and using the search function, which most people forget exists, and saying, okay, cute puppies. That's
Yeah.
something that pleases me. I'm actively seeking those things out, right? And so if you're going to pick up your phone first thing in the morning, at the very least, do it to search for something that you desire, something that pleases you or brings you joy, right? That's a simple shift that's like not changing your behavior entirely because it's really hard. These are designed to keep us addicted to them. It's difficult to shift those addictions, but let's interject them and like co-opt the system, right? At the very least, you can search, you can decide what you're consuming instead of allowing it to be curated for you to sell to you, to make you a product.
Mm. I love that. I love that. And I'd love if you can share, any part of your self-care system that you use that could be helpful for people at this time of the year.
Absolutely. I use a very simple three-step framework. I call the triple S soul care framework. The first layer of this is self-intimacy, getting to know yourself, using different tools, using different systems. I love astrology. I love tarot. I love guided visualizations for this work. And I always say, there is a phrase that's super common. I know it like the back of my hand. But when was the last time you actually looked at the back of your hand? When was the last time you looked at the small details? I did this the other day and I was like, oh my gosh, I have a cut above my knuckle over there. What? When did that get there? How did it get there? Right? And if we started to get that curious about ourselves and
Mhm.
about what lights us up, what, what our purpose is, right? Like, do you ask yourself what your purpose is? People are like, no, I don't know. I'm so lost. Like, did you ask? Because I'm pretty sure if you take 1 minute to ask, something leaks out from you. You can quiet down enough. So that's the first layer. Get intimate with yourself. Get curious about who you are and what makes you who you are. And I personally love to, like, I call it my Barney bag of tools. I'm just like finding different ways and different modalities to explore that. And I guide my clients through that as well, but that's the base layer. And then the second layer is to build that soul aligned strategy. So come up with a hypothesis. I would feel better if I would make more money, if I would have more pleasure in my life if I do X. Come up with a timeline for how long you're going to do it and how you're going to measure it. It's that simple, right? Um, I would make more money if I was joyful. Is if I was more joyful is the hypothesis I'm running for all of 2025, and I'm starting now. And I have different layers of that strategy for the mechanisms for cultivating that sense of joy. Dance is one of them. Movement every single day is one of those things. um Prayer, and reintegrating prayer back into my life, and allowing myself to talk, right? I think something I've been exploring is that my throat chakra is often quite closed. So putting myself on podcasts, finding opportunities to talk. And I think prayer is one of those ways that I can actually hear my own voice. I'm recording a lot of my voice. So these are different ways that I'm encountering joy. And I'm really convinced that I'm going to be, as profitable as possible in my business and in my personal life in 2025 as a result of it. So building that soul aligned strategy that's derived from what you learn from yourself in the self intimacy portion, right? There's a reason I'm doing it through the lens of joy. My 11th house is Leo. That's playfulness. That's joy. That's pleasure. That's charisma. So I'm looking at that and I'm building my strategy around learning that through, astrology. And then the last layer of it is self-celebration. This is the thing that people pleasers miss the most. You celebrate everybody else in your life and you never celebrate yourself.
Amen.
And I think that's actually like one of the easiest ways to shift your whole circumstance. If
Mhm.
you spent the rest of the year celebrating yourself, affirming yourself, it would shift how you roll into next year. And
Mhm.
so that's a challenge that I actually have to our listeners today. Like, it doesn't have to be so complicated. One of my favorite tools is futureme.org. You can write yourself a letter, set the date and time you want it to be delivered, and it comes right into your inbox and it's free. And that's a way that I celebrate myself quite often. Anytime I have a major milestone, if I don't want to, and sometimes I'm investing in like a nice piece of jewelry or a massage, but something as simple as writing kind words to myself actually
Mm,
often has a bigger impact than those other financial investments that I might make. So
mm.
I triple dog dare you.
Yes.
Celebrate yourself for the rest of 2024. Why not?
I love it. I love it. You are speaking right to my heart. I feel like we are truly soul sisters. Uh,
That's what
honestly.
I thought when I found this podcast. I was like, it's for me.
Ah,
She
oh my
made this
gosh.
podcast for me.
Oh my gosh, I did. And so, yes, I am so big on celebration, and it's always interesting to me how difficult it is for people to find a thing to say, and what does that say about our culture? What does that say about how we are living, right? There's been a really big push on tapping into gratitude, and my goal and my hope, and I know with sparkly Candace here, that together we can continue to encourage people to celebrate themselves more, because this is part of having your self-care routine. And the other thing that I really loved that you said, that I want to highlight, is the words, "I'm starting now." And so often we hear people say, especially at this time of the year, "Oh, I'm going to wait until XYZ and then I'll start."
Yeah,
And I love that you dared. I love that you're inviting people to get onto the journey right now. Um, Man, life is short. So why would you wait? Why would we wait for any opportunity to celebrate, to love, to feel joy, to feel these positive experiences? Why would we wait? Right. So I'm
yeah,
so glad that you reached out to be on the podcast, because you are truly a bright light and absolutely sparkly. And my goodness, this has been so much fun. Now, I know you've got a free soul care workbook. Can you just share a little bit about that?
absolutely. I think I'm an artist, like I said, and I love finding creative ways to tap into self, and to pull out those self reflections and those layers of self intimacy. So I've curated a really amazing resource. It's a hybrid of astrology and tarot, and it allows you to build a personalized ritual that you can use to round out 2024, get some more data. I always say, like, failure is an inherent part of success. So let yourself fail before 2025 comes and you're trying to, actually be successful. Like, fail now, mess up now, play a little bit now, and then you'll have more clarity going into 2025. So this is a way to personalize your nice soul care ritual. And I walk you through all the steps. I guide you through it. You'll have a nice workbook to piece it all together and to hold yourself accountable with, and set clear goals for yourself as well.
I love that. And I love that you've made it so simple for people. So thank you so much. And there will be a link below for people to download that. My friend, I'm truly grateful for you. I want to thank you so much for being on the podcast. All the links will be below so people can connect with you. Thank you so much for being on this episode of Power to the People Pleasers.
It's been a delight. Thank you for having me.
And to all of our listeners, what a great show. Thank you for tuning in yet again. Please stay tuned for the next episode of Power to the People Pleasers, coming soon. Have a